The day dawned with a light mist covering the vineyards, as if the weather were trying to hide from the world what had been born between us. Marco was still here, and that, in itself, was an unexpected gift. He appeared in the kitchen barefoot, wearing a thin t-shirt clinging to his body, and his hair tousled as if the pillow had tried to hold on to a little more of the night. He greeted me with a light kiss on the cheek. A simple gesture, intimate and dangerous. I postponed the trip. Just a few days, he said, as if it were nothing. I just nodded, pretending to be natural, but inside, something in me quieted down. I was starting to like that routine with him too much. His presence occupying spaces that, for years, had been mine alone. His scent on the pillow, his footsteps echoing through the house. I was thinking of photographing the old barrel shed today, he said, as he poured himself some coffee. The light coming in through the cracks is absurdly poetic. I nodded and smiled. He saw beauty where I saw only routine, and maybe that was what enchanted me so much. The shed was further down, next to the land where my grandfather used to keep his horses. Marco spent almost 2 hours there, photographing old wood, dusty glass, old labels, and even my reflection in a broken window. At one point, I approached to help him climb one of the support structures. He held out his hand, and when our fingers touched, it was as if my breath stopped for a second. "You have a beauty that's hard to capture, you know?" he said with the camera hanging around his neck. "I don't know how to handle compliments very well. Maybe you just haven't heard enough." I remained silent, the kind of silence that speaks louder than any answer. Later, as we drove home, the truck stopped in front of the stone entrance, and Marco stared at the mansion as if he saw something there that I myself had never seen before. "I could write a book just about this place," he said, "but I think it would be more interesting to write about you." "About me?" "About the man who took care of all this by himself after a loss, who turned pain into wine, who lives in silence but carries worlds in his eyes." That night, Marco slept with me again. There was no sex, there was no need. It was just a hug, skin on skin, hearts beating in unison. And maybe it was more intense than anything else. The next day, Marco left early. He said he needed to go to the neighboring town to take care of some things for his article. It was the first morning in days that I spent alone. And strangely, everything seemed too quiet even for this place. The sound of birds, the smell of coffee, Donna Lucia's slow footsteps in the kitchen, everything seemed to function as usual, but something was missing, or rather, someone was missing. I tried to keep myself busy by checking the barrels, organizing the inventory, and even reading the emails I usually ignored. But the truth is that, with each passing hour, I found myself looking out the window, listening to the silence more attentively than necessary, as if any different noise could announce his return. It was already past 4 in the afternoon when I heard, in the distance, the familiar sound of tires squeaking on the gravel road. I went out to the porch. Marco parked slowly and got out smiling, not in a hurry, not with fanfare, but with that restrained manner that always seemed to carry something more than words could say. In his left hand he was carrying a bouquet. And it wasn't just any bouquet. They were wildflowers, carefully picked, wrapped in rustic old newspaper and tied with string. There was no formal perfection there, but there was delicacy, intention, choice. "I brought these for you," he said, still standing at the foot of the stairs, as if waiting for my reaction before coming up. I stood still for a moment, and then I slowly descended the steps, feeling my heart beat differently with a mixture of surprise, joy, and a slight twinge of disbelief. "Flowers?" I asked, my voice lower than I intended. "I saw these colors and thought of you. Simple as that." I smiled. I looked down at the bouquet, then back at him. "They're beautiful." Marco held my gaze for a moment, then replied with a calm, almost shy smile. "Just like you. You're beautiful too." I picked up the flowers carefully. The scent was subtle, fresh, like the earth after rain. There was lavender, small white daisies, sprigs of rosemary, and something that looked like purple basil. An unusual combination, but perfectly harmonious like him. We went upstairs together. I put the flowers in a simple glass vase and left them on the living room table, where the afternoon light was still streaming in through the tall windows. The color of the petals broke the neutral tone of the house and somehow broke something inside me too. That afternoon I realized that Marco wasn't just extending his stay. He was leaving his mark. Flowers, when they arrive like this, for no reason, almost always have more to say than they seem. Later, after the sun had set behind the hills and the sky was tinged with shades of violet and gold, I decided to do something I hadn't done in a long time. Cook a real meal. Not out of obligation, not to fill the time, but out of gratitude. I prepared a special dinner. I calmly chopped vegetables, seasoned the meat with herbs picked from the garden, and chose one of the oldest wines in the house, one of those I used to save only for special guests, or for nights when something inside me needed to be celebrated, even in silence. Donna Lucia had already left. The house was all ours. Marco appeared in the kitchen while I was finishing the dishes, leaning against the door, watching me in silence, with that way he has of paying attention to the subtleties of life. "Can I help?" he asked. "Not today. Today you just sit and enjoy." He smiled, surprised, and I smiled too. I think that was the first time in a long time that I had done something like that for someone. I set the table more carefully than usual. Cloth napkins, crystal glasses that I hardly ever used, and the bouquet of flowers he had brought me in the center of the table, like a living presence between us. We ate slowly, between sips of wine and comments about the flavor of the herbs, how well the roast was done, the silence of the night. Marco seemed quieter than usual, but his eyes were full of something he hadn't yet put into words. Until, in a calm, firm voice, he said, "Giulio, I wanted to ask you something." "Go ahead," I replied, my heart racing. He took a deep breath, put down his cutlery, and looked me in the eyes. "I wanted to know if you would go out with me. For real. Not just for a few days. Not just while I'm here. I like you. I like us. And I think that deserves to be lived without fear." I was silent for a moment. Not because I hesitated, but because I was moved. This man, sitting in front of me, was offering me something I thought I would never experience again. A new beginning. A fresh start. So I took a deep breath and replied, "I accept." He smiled, relieved. But before he could say anything, I added, "But on one condition." Marco raised an eyebrow, curious. "What would that be?" "If you come live with me, here, in this old stubborn house. If we're going to do this, let's do it right." His smile widened, and his eyes sparkled with something between surprise and joy. "Then it's a deal," he said, getting up slowly. He came over to me, walked around the table, and without saying another word, kissed me. It was a kiss full of determination, presence, and answers. At that moment, there was no more room for doubt. He was staying. And for the first time in many years, I was no longer afraid to share my home or my heart. Marco had just gone upstairs to take a shower. I stayed in the kitchen, clearing the glasses and putting away the rest of dinner. The night was calm. The silence in the house was pleasant. But something made me go back to the living room. Maybe a hunch, maybe just the habit of tidying up before going to bed. That's when I saw his cell phone on the table. The screen lit up with a notification. A simple message. Direct. "Hi, gorgeous, I miss you. When are you coming back?" I stood still. This wasn't just any kind of longing. The tone was intimate, familiar, laden with a kind of affection that didn't match the feeling of exclusivity that had been growing between us. My chest tightened. I'm not one to invade anyone's privacy. But that message, right there in plain sight, hit me in a way I couldn't ignore. Marco came down a few minutes later, his hair still damp, wearing a loose t-shirt and his usual easygoing manner. When he saw me, he immediately noticed that something had changed in my face. "Did something happen?" he asked, walking over to me. "You got a message on your phone," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "From someone who called you hottie, saying they miss you, and wanting to know when you're coming back." He stopped. His relaxed body stiffened a little, but his eyes didn't stray from mine. "It's just a guy," he replied bluntly. "I went out with him twice before I came here. Nothing serious, nothing much happened." Even so, I began looking away for a moment. It took me by surprise. We're together now, and I need to know where I stand." He nodded. Without trying to justify himself further, he slowly picked up his phone, unlocked it in front of me, scrolled to the conversation, and clicked on the audio icon. He took a deep breath and recorded. "Hi, how are you? Look, I don't know when I'll be back, but I wanted to tell you that I started dating someone. I'm with someone. And it's serious. So, out of respect for me and him, I think it's best if we don't keep in touch, okay? Take care of yourself. Good luck." He sent it, without deleting anything, without hiding anything, and he left his phone on the table, looking back at me. "I don't want you to doubt how I feel, Julio. I'm here, with you, and only with you. If you have any doubts, I'd rather we talk about them, even if it hurts. But I don't want to create shadows between us." It took me a few seconds to respond. My chest was still tight, but something inside me relaxed. "Thank you for not running away." "I don't run away from people I want to be with," he said firmly. We looked at each other in silence for a while. Then he came closer, touched my face with his warm hand, and kissed meslowly, as if sealing a choice. In that kiss, there was no more room for doubt. Only the certainty that, despite everything, we were really trying. In the days that followed, the house became too quiet again. Marco had to travel for a few days to take care of some last things, pick up some of his things, and prepare for the move. He said he wouldn't be long, that he'd be back soon, and I believed him. But even so, his absence hit me in a strange way. The house wasn't the same anymore. The bouquet of flowers he had given me was slowly drying on the table, but I didn't have the heart to throw it away. The pillow in the bedroom still smelled like him, and sometimes I would lie there for a moment just to smell it, just to pretend he was still here. Everything seemed to be on hold, as if the house was breathing only halfway. During the day, I tried to keep myself busy. I walked among the grapevines, organized the inventory, answered emails I had previously ignored. But a moment's pause was enough for my body to feel as those who wait feel. His absence wasn't loud. It was that quiet, insistent longing that settles in the details. In the extra cup on the table, in the closed bedroom next door, in the sound of the stairs with no footsteps at night. Sometimes he would send a message, other times, a photo, a street he was walking down, a box being closed, the elevator mirror reflecting his tired expression. I always replied, trying to sound calm. But the truth is, I counted the minutes. I wanted to see him. I wanted to hug him, feel the weight of his body against mine, the smell of his skin, the touch of his firm hands, his hoarse voice calling my name with that tranquility that only he could have. I wanted him here, no longer as a visitor, no longer as someone passing through, but as the man who was now part of the house, of the bed, of my life. And with each passing day, the certainty grew. He had made a home in me even before he arrived with his bags. 15 days. That was how long Marco was away. 15 days that felt like an entire winter, even with the spring sun warming the vineyards. I counted not only the days, but the mornings without coffee for two, the silent lunches, the dinners without that smile across the table. Every noise in the house seemed to remind me that he wasn't there. But that afternoon, when I heard the sound of the truck coming up the gravel road, I knew even before I saw him. It was him. It was as if the whole earth around the house had sighed with me. I went out to the porch with my heart pounding. The truck stopped in front of the house, loaded with boxes, a large suitcase, a backpack thrown on the passenger seat, and a fresh bouquet in his hands. Marco got out smiling, his eyes tired but alive. He was tanned, thinner perhaps, with slightly longer hair and a light stubble. But it was him, the same look, the same warmth, the same presence that made everything around him seem more real. "I'm back," he said, as if it weren't obvious, as if the whole world wasn't already saying it. I walked down the steps slowly, but my body was ahead of my head. When I got close, he dropped the bouquet on the hood of the truck and wrapped his arms around me, strong, whole, without fear. We hugged right there, breathless, eyes closed, and a silence between us that said more than any words could. "I missed you," I whispered against his shoulder. "Me too." much more than I thought I would. We stood there for a long time. The smell of the earth, the warmth of the afternoon, and his scent, that specific smell, I couldn't explain, but that made me close my eyes, all mixed together in a return that was more than physical. It was emotional. It was spiritual. We started unloading the boxes together. He laughed at some of the mess he had made in his rush to pack everything, showed me a picture he had brought from his old house, a crooked lamp he insisted on keeping, books, clothes, small objects that would begin to fill the empty spaces in my life, or rather, in our life. When we finished, it was already night. The house looked different, fuller, warmer, more alive, as if even the walls felt that now there was someone else there to hear them creak. We prepared something simple for dinner: bread, cheese, wine, and ate sitting on the porch, with the new bouquet beside us and the starry sky above us. We spoke little. We looked at each other with the peace of those who have finally arrived where they wanted to be. Later, in the bedroom, there was no ceremony. Marco slowly took off his t-shirt, and I watched him in silence, with a kind of calm reverence. He came closer, lay down with me, and we stayed there, skin to skin, breath against breath. We kissed passionately, but without rushing. His hands ran over my body as if they already knew every curve, but wanted to rediscover everything. The touch was more intimate than any nudity. It was the certainty that this time, it wouldn't be just another night. We made love for the first time as life partners. Without fear, without doubt, without haste. Like people who know they don't need to leave anymore. And that night, when he fell asleep with his face pressed against my neck, his arm across my chest, and his warm breath on my collarbone, I knew it was no longer a house for just one person. It was our home now, our place in the world, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. It's been 4 years since the day Marco came back with his belongings and left his old life on the gravel road that leads here. 4 years since that tight hug on the porch, since the unhurried kiss in the kitchen, since the first, "This is where I want to be." And even today, I sometimes find myself watching him walk through the house wearing the same rumpled shirt, his hair tousled, his bare feet scratching the old wooden floor, and I feel overcome by a gentle wave of enchantment. It's no longer that urgent passion of the beginning, but a mature, deep love that grows silently and spreads like the roots of the vines outside, firm, hidden under the earth, sustaining everything that blooms above. The house changed with him. It gained new paintings, more books stacked in the corners, different blankets thrown on the sofas, little messes that didn't exist before and that make me smile today. Even the silence of the house has changed. It is no longer a burden, but a companion. We also became partners in the winery. Marco, with his sensitive gaze and his intuition for storytelling, helped transform our label into something even more alive, more desirable. He brought new ideas, beautiful photographs, and moving texts. People who come here no longer come just for the wines, they come for the experience, for the soul of the place, for the soul that is now made of two. Our mornings remain simple: coffee filtered through a cloth, fresh bread, conversations punctuated by lazy kisses, and plans jotted down in a notebook that no one else understands but us. Sometimes he surprises me with flowers picked from the garden. Other times I leave a silly note stuck on the fridge door. Not because it's necessary, but because love, when well cared for, flourishes in small gestures. We still make love often, and with more abandon than before, not because it's new, but because of the intimacy that time builds. We know each other's bodies like someone who knows a house, with their eyes closed, every crack, every silence, every place that needs more care. We've argued a few times, of course. Every life lived together is also made up of noise, but what sustains us is always greater than any disagreement, and we always come back. We always choose each other again. Today, when I look at Marco sleeping next to me, his chest slightly covered by the sheet, one hand on my waist, and his calm breathing warming my skin, I think about everything I experienced before he arrived. And I realize that, no matter how long my road of loneliness was, it was what led me here. This is the end of our story, at least, the part that can be told in words, because what we are living now cannot be summed up in sentences. It fits in the look, the touch, the wine shared at sunset. It fits in the gentle certainty that loving, sometimes, is not about finding someone to fill a void, but someone who makes you feel that nothing will ever be missing again. With love, Julio.